Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The laughter hit Arya Voss harder than any battlefield explosion she'd ever imagined. It echoed through the freezing steel hall of Valiant Ridge Military Hospital, sharp, metallic, humiliating. She stood there in her too big rookie paramedic jacket, gloves trembling, eyes locked on the wounded Navy SEAL commander bleeding out on the stretcher. And behind her, 3 senior doctors leaned against the wall, watching her like she was a joke someone forgot to finish. Dr. Keldon smirked first. "Let's see what the little rookie thinks she's doing," he muttered, just loud enough to sting. Arya swallowed hard. She could feel her ears burning under the harsh fluorescent lights. The commander, Rafe Maddox, was unconscious, chest barely rising, blood pooling across the sheets, warm and slick. His uniform was shredded, his dog tags clinking against the rail with each shaky breath. He looked like a giant collapse from the sky, a man carved from mountains now brought low. A medic whispered urgently, "He's crashing." But the doctors didn't move. Dr. Keldon folded his arms, amused. "Let her handle it. If she's going to fail, might as well be today." Arya felt the humiliation coil inside her like fire. She wasn't supposed to be on this shift. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near a SEAL commander. She wasn't even supposed to be trusted with trauma yet. But someone had yelled for help, she was closest, and now all eyes were on her. Her hands steadied, not because she wasn't terrified, but because she trained herself to survive terror. She leaned over the commander and whispered as if he could hear, "You're not dying today. Not on my watch." Dr. Marsek laughed under his breath. Listen to her. Hero fantasies already. The words stabbed her, but she ignored them. She placed 2 fingers on the commander's cold neck, no pulse. A wave of icy fear punched her chest. She had seconds before he crossed the line no one returns from. A nurse gasped, "He's going into cardiac arrest. Someone page cardiology." "No," Arya said sharply. "There's no time." Her voice shocked the room into silence. Even the mocking doctors froze for a heartbeat. She climbed onto the stretcher, standing over the commander, and began compressions with precision sharp enough to slice through arrogance. Her palms slammed into his sternum rhythmically, her breath shaking, her muscles burning. The commander's blood smeared across her sleeves, warm like a warning. Dr. Keldon scoffed. "That's too fast. Rookie mistake." But Arya didn't stop. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe wrong. She counted silently, each number a battle cry she'd carried from childhood through every rejection, every person who told her she wasn't strong enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. The monitor flatlined again. A nurse whispered, "He's slipping?" "Come on," Arya muttered. "Fight." Another compression. Another. The commander's fingers twitched, just barely, but enough to make the doctor straighten in surprise. Then, in a single violent jolt, Rafe Maddox gasped. The room exploded into shocked shouts. "He's responding what? How did?" The commander's eyes fluttered open, stormy blue, unfocused but alive. He saw only one thing, Arya. The rookie who wouldn't give up on him. He lifted a weak hand, shaking from pain, and everyone went silent. The wounded Navy SEAL commander saluted her. The same doctors who laughed at her turned pale. And Arya Voss felt her world shift under her feet. The room stayed frozen long after Commander Rafe Maddox's trembling salute fell back to his chest. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. No one blinked. Even the monitors seemed to pause. Arya stood rooted at the foot of the stretcher, her gloves soaked in blood, chest heaving from compressions. She felt like she'd stepped into someone else's life, someone braver, someone she didn't yet believe she was. Dr. Keldon stiffened, his smug expression cracking into something sour and frightened. Dr. Marsek fumbled for words, his arrogance dissolving as fast as the color drained from his face. A single rookie paramedic had just revived a SEAL commander they believed beyond saving. The nurse closest to Arya whispered, How did you do that?" But Arya couldn't answer. She didn't know herself. All she knew was that her instinct had taken over, the same instinct nobody trusted but her. The same instinct she learned to fight for alone. Commander Maddox's eyelids fluttered, his voice gravelly and harsh, "Who saved me?" His question sliced through the room like a blade. Light bounced off the steel walls, painting the air cold and sharp, as though even the building waited for her answer. Arya swallowed, feeling suddenly too small for her own boots. "I just did compressions, sir," she stammered. But Rafe Maddox, even half-conscious, had the gaze of a man forged in war. He focused on her face as if memorizing it for the battlefield. "You didn't panic," he rasped. "Everyone else froze, but you didn't." Dr. Keldon cleared his throat, desperate to regain authority. "Commander Maddox," she acted prematurely. The commander cut him off with a glare so fierce Keldon physically stepped back. "She acted," he said weakly, "when no one else did." The words hit the doctors with the weight of a judgment they couldn't dodge. As the commander was wheeled toward the ICU, Arya remained standing, her knees threatening to buckle. Nurses brushed past her, whispering in shocked disbelief, but she barely heard them. Her mind spiraled back to the beginning, the real beginning. 2 months earlier, on her first day as a trainee, she had overheard the same doctors saying she was quota-filling, underqualified, lucky to even be here. They'd never asked her why she worked harder than everyone else or why she never backed down. They didn't know about the small farmhouse in Montana. They didn't know about her father, once a medic, who taught her more about saving lives than any textbook ever did. They didn't know about his death, how she was the only one beside him, performing desperate compressions on a chest that never rose again. That failure had shaped her hands into steel. But healing others didn't erase losing him. Nothing could. She blinked hard and snapped back to the present as Dr. Keldon approached her, jaw tight. "I don't know what stunt you pulled," Keldon said quietly, "but don't expect applause. You got lucky." Arya's tired eyes lifted. "He lived. For now," he snapped. His bitterness stank of embarrassment. "But don't let this go to your head. Rookie mistakes kill more people than bullets. And your little performance? It won't happen again." Arya didn't reply. His words no longer reached her. Some invisible shift had happened inside her, small but irreversible. She turned slowly toward the ICU doors, watching through the glass as Commander Maddox's stretcher disappeared behind a curtain of nurses and machines. Then she felt something strange. A feeling she hadn't tasted in years. Not pride. Not victory. Something quieter. Something steadier. A sense that fate had finally nudged her onto a path she didn't know she was allowed to walk. Behind her, Keldon muttered to Marsek, "This isn't over." He was right. It wasn't. Because Arya Voss didn't realize the truth yet, didn't realize that the man she had just saved, the commander who saluted her, carried secrets that would shake the entire hospital. And she didn't know that saving him had placed a target on her back. Not from enemies outside, but from the very people wearing white coats beside her. Arya barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the commander's skin turning gray, felt his ribs shifting beneath her palms, heard the doctors laughing behind her. By morning, exhaustion clung to her like a second uniform. But the hospital didn't slow down for anyone, not even rookies who'd resurrected Navy SEAL commanders. As she walked into the main corridor, the atmosphere had changed. Conversations halted when she passed. People whispered behind clipboards. Some nodded at her with cautious respect, others with jealousy sharpened to daggers. But what froze her steps was the sight up ahead. Dr. Keldon and Dr. Marsek speaking to Colonel Astra Delane, the military liaison whose presence always meant trouble. Astra's icy posture, her hair tied so tight it looked painful, made the air drop 10 degrees. She was staring straight at Arya through the glass partition, her expression unreadable. Not angry. Not impressed. Something stranger. Something calculating. Arya tried to pretend she didn't notice the scrutiny, but her heart hammered against her ribs as she approached the ICU. Commander Maddox's room was heavily guarded now, 2 Marines posted outside, rigid as statues, rifles slung tight. That alone was unusual. ICU patients didn't get armed guards. Something wasn't right. When Arya stepped closer, one Marine gave a tiny nod as if acknowledging her silently. The other opened the door without being asked. She blinked. Rookies didn't get this kind of access. Inside, the room was dim except for the soft blue glow of the monitors casting shadows across the commander's bandaged body. His chest rose slowly, a fragile rhythm carved out of stubbornness. Arya moved closer, suddenly afraid to breathe too loud. Then she saw it. His fingers twitching, the same way they had right before he saluted her. Without opening his eyes, he whispered, "Voss." Arya Voss. Her breath caught. He remembered her name even through sedation. "I'm here," she whispered. His next words were barely audible. "They can't know what I had on me." Arya stiffened. "What do you mean? Who can't know?" But his eyes fluttered. The weight of pain dragged him back under. She stepped back, pulse racing. Had she misheard? No. His whisper had been too deliberate. Too desperate. Something was hidden behind his survival, something bigger than a medical emergency. When she stepped out into the hallway, Colonel Astra Delane was waiting for her, arms folded. "Paramedic Voss," Astra said in a tone that sounded like an interrogation sealed under velvet. "Walk with me." Arya followed reluctantly, feeling the tension stretch between them like a wire. Astra didn't look at her as she spoke. "Commander Maddox is a high-value military asset. His condition and anything he says during recovery are classified." Arya swallowed. "I understand, ma'am. Do you?" Astra stopped abruptly, turning to face her. "He spoke to you the moment he regained consciousness. He saluted you. That is unusual." Arya's throat tightened. "I was just doing my job." Astra's eyes hardened, not unkind but sharp, the way glass breaks light. "From this moment forward, you are not to discuss what happened yesterday. Not with staff. Not with reporters. Not with your family. Do you understand?" Arya nodded slowly. But the colonel stepped closer. "Listen carefully. That man was attacked. Not injured in training. Not wounded by accident. Attacked. And until we know by who, everyone is a suspect." Arya felt the floor tilt. "Everyone?" Astra nodded once. "Everyone." Then she walked away, leaving Arya staring after her with cold dread sinking into her spine. Behind her, the Marines at the commander's door watched her silently. And for the first time since she revived him, Arya wondered if saving Commander Maddox had saved her life, or placed her in the crosshairs of something far more dangerous. Arya's shift started before sunrise, but the hospital already buzzed with a strange, suffocating tension. Soldiers she'd never seen before inspected hallways, checked ceiling vents, and scanned ID badges like hunters tracking ghosts. Whatever Commander Maddox had been carrying, it wasn't just important, it was explosive. Arya kept her head down as she approached the ICU, but even from a distance she noticed something wrong. The Marines usually guarding the door were gone. In their place stood Dr. Keldon, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes glued to a clipboard he wasn't actually reading. He blocked her path. "ICU access is restricted," he said flatly. "You're not needed here today." Arya frowned. "Colonel Delane said I was cleared." Keldon leaned close, voice dripping with superiority sharpened by bruised ego. "The colonel isn't medical staff." "I am. And I'm saying no." His tone made her chest tighten. She stepped back slowly, but her instincts screamed that something about this wasn't routine. Something was being hidden, and not from enemies outside. She pivoted toward the supply corridor, hoping for a moment to breathe, but spotted Dr. Marsek whispering urgently to two hospital administrators. Their faces were pale, eyes darting toward Maddox's room. Marsek held a small black pouch, the kind military medics used for secure transport of classified items. Arya's stomach dropped. Maddox's words came back like thunder, "They can't know what I had on me." But Marsek was heading toward the restricted records wing, the wing only high-ranking officials entered. Panic prickled under Arya's skin. If they were trying to hide whatever Maddox carried, they weren't doing it for his protection. They were doing it to bury something. She ducked behind a steel rack as Marsek passed, his hand shaking around the pouch. "Where do you want it?" he whispered. One administrator murmured, "The basement archives. Level 6. No cameras. Level 6. The same floor where her father once worked. The same floor she wasn't supposed to know existed. Something inside her hardened, fear and fury blending until she could no longer tell them apart. She waited until they disappeared down the stairwell before following silently, keeping her footsteps light. The deeper she went, the colder the air became, humming with the echo of old cables and forgotten generators. Level 6 was dim, lit by flickering yellow bulbs that cast long, trembling shadows. Arya moved between them like a ghost, pulse thundering. At the far end of the hall, she spotted Marsek and the administrators slipping into a secure storage room. She crept closer. Their voices were muffled behind the thick door, but she heard fragments. "Too dangerous. If Maddox wakes. Evidence. Chain of command." Her breath caught. Evidence. So Maddox had carried something incriminating. Something powerful enough to make doctors, risk everything to hide it. She leaned closer, heart pounding, but her elbow brushed a metal tray and it clattered to the floor. The voices inside stopped instantly. Footsteps rushed toward the door. Arya sprinted into the old maintenance wing, weaving between abandoned equipment as shouts echoed behind her. "Who's there? Find them." She slipped into a narrow oxygen storage room and pressed herself behind tall tanks, forcing her breath to slow. Boots pounded past the doorway. Sweat slid down her spine. If they caught her down here, she knew exactly what story they'd tell. Curious rookie, wrong place, wrong time, tragic accident. When the footsteps faded, she waited a full minute before moving again. She crept up the stairwell, her hands trembling, her mind racing with new, terrifying clarity. Someone inside the hospital had betrayed Commander Maddox. Someone feared what he knew. And now, because she'd saved the wrong man, they feared her too. When she reached the main floor, Colonel Delane was waiting, arms folded, eyes cold. "Paramedic Voss," she said quietly. "We need to talk. Now." Colonel Delane led Arya into a small debrief room, bare walls, cold metal table, 2 chairs that felt more like restraints than furniture. The fluorescent light hummed overhead, flickering just enough to raise the hairs on Arya's arms. Delane closed the door softly, but the silence felt like a trap snapping shut. She didn't sit. She stood tall, hands behind her back, eyes drilling into areas like she could see every secret she'd ever carried. "What were you doing on level 6? Delane asked. No anger. No shouting. Just a quiet accusation that felt heavier than any scream. Arya swallowed. I wasn't supposed to be there." Delane raised an eyebrow. "That's not an answer." Arya's throat tightened. She couldn't say she'd followed Marsek. Couldn't say she overheard them hiding evidence. That would paint a target on her forehead. "I heard something," she whispered instead. "Something that didn't feel right." Delane's stare didn't soften. "Define not right." Arya hesitated, but only for a moment. She'd been underestimated her whole life. Staying silent never kept her safe before. "The doctors," she finally said. "They're hiding something. Something the commander had on him." Delane's jaw clenched, the first crack in her stone facade. "You're not cleared to make accusations." "I'm not making accusations," Arya said, voice trembling. "I'm telling you what I saw." Delane stepped closer, shadows cutting across her stern features. "What exactly did you see?" Arya's heart hammered. She thought of the black pouch, the whispered plans, the fear in the administrators' voices. But she chose her words carefully. Something classified was taken from Commander Maddox's belongings and moved somewhere hidden. They didn't want anyone to know. Delane went still. Completely still. Like a soldier hearing a sniper's breath on the wind. Slowly, she reached into her jacket and placed a folded sheet of paper on the table. "This," she said, tapping it lightly, "was found inside Commander Maddox's vest." Arya stared at it but didn't touch it. "That doesn't make sense," she whispered. "Why are you showing me this?" Delane hesitated, an almost imperceptible moment of conflict. "Because," Delane said quietly, "the commander asked for you." Arya's breath caught. "He's awake." "Barely. But awake enough to give one instruction." Delane leaned closer. He said, "Trust Voss." Arya felt the room tilt as if the floor had momentarily disappeared. She looked down at the folded paper, her fingers trembling as she opened it. Inside was a small photograph, grainy, taken in haste. A warehouse. 2 men in military jackets carrying crates marked with a symbol Arya recognized from the emergency response manuals. Classified biochemical transport. But the most shocking part wasn't the crates. It was the third person in the picture. His face partially hidden but unmistakable. Dr. Marsek. Arya's stomach dropped. The doctors weren't just hiding evidence. They were involved in something bigger. Something dangerous. Delane watched her reaction closely. "You understand now why your little adventure on level 6 has consequences," she said. "You saw something you weren't meant to see." Her tone wasn't threatening. It was warning. Arya folded the photo back carefully. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Delane inhaled slowly. Commander Maddox survived an ambush meant to silence him. He was carrying proof of a military-backed smuggling scheme, medical supplies, weapons, biochemical samples. It involves personnel inside this hospital. Arya felt her pulse throb in her ears. "And you think they'll come after him again?" Delane nodded once. "Or after anyone he trusts." Arya's throat tightened. "Including me." "Especially you," Delane said. "You revived the one man they needed dead. And now they're desperate." Silence filled the room like cold water. Then Delane stepped back and opened the door. "Your shift ends in 3 hours," she said. "Go back to work. Act normal." And Arya looked up. "Stay alive." Arya returned to her shift with Delane's warning echoing in her skull like a heartbeat she couldn't escape. Act normal. Stay alive. But nothing felt normal now. Every hallway felt too narrow. Every whisper felt sharper. Every pair of eyes watching her felt like they were waiting for her to slip. She tried to focus on routine tasks, checking vitals, updating charts, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Around noon she passed Dr. Keldon near the nurse's station. He didn't glare, didn't smirk, he smiled. A slow, thin smile that felt colder than a winter grave. "Busy morning?" he asked casually. She didn't answer. She couldn't. He leaned closer, voice soft and venomous. "You should get some rest. Rookie mistakes come from exhaustion." The way he said mistakes felt like a threat wrapped in silk. Arya walked away quickly, pulse racing, but the fear burned hotter with every step. Keldon knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough to be dangerous. By evening the hospital shifted moods again, this time darker, heavier. A storm rolled across the mountains outside, thunder shaking the windows and lightning splintering the sky into jagged white scars. Arya stood at the ICU window, watching rain hammer the glass, when she noticed something strange. The Marines who had returned earlier were gone again. No guards. No posted security. Just an empty hallway leading to Commander Maddox's room. Ice slid down her spine. She turned to the nearest nurse. "Where are the guards?" The nurse frowned. "What do you mean?" "They left an hour ago," said Colonel Delane. "Reassign them." Arya felt her stomach twist. Delane would never remove protection without telling her. A cold realization hit her. Someone forged the order. Someone was clearing the way. She rushed toward Maddox's room, her boots slipping on the polished floor. She threw open the door and froze. The room was dark. The machines were off. The bed was empty. Her breath stopped inside her chest. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." A shadow shifted behind her. She spun just as a gloved hand clamped over her mouth. Another grabbed her arm. She kicked, twisted, fought like a trapped animal, but the two masked figures were stronger. They dragged her into the supply closet beside the ICU, the door slamming shut behind them. Her back hit the metal shelves, sending boxes crashing around her. The taller figure leaned close, voice muffled by a mask. "You should have ignored what you saw, rookie." Her pulse hammered. "Where is he?" she choked out. The second figure chuckled. "Far from here. And soon you'll join him." Arya's fear flared into something hotter, defiance. She threw her weight sideways, slamming one attacker into the wall. He cursed, loosening his grip. She grabbed a metal oxygen tank and swung it wildly, connecting with someone's shoulder. The impact jarred her bones, but the attacker stumbled. She shoved past them and yanked the door open. The hallway was empty. Lights flickered. Thunder shook the building again, as if nature itself warned her to run. Behind her, the masked men recovered fast. Too fast. She sprinted, heart thundering, turning down corridors she knew by muscle memory, her breath burning her lungs. But then darkness. The entire hospital went black. Machines died. Lights flickered out. Emergency alarms choked mid-scream. The building groaned under the sudden power outage, plunging everything into shadow thick as smoke. Arya froze. This wasn't normal. Hospitals didn't lose power, not without backup generators kicking in instantly. But nothing came. Nothing hummed. Nothing lit. Silence swallowed the hallways. A silence so heavy it felt alive. A voice emerged behind her, cold, mocking, echoing down the dark corridor. "Run all you want," the masked man said softly. "No one can hear you now." Arya's breath shook. The storm raged outside. The darkness pressed closer. And somewhere in the building, Commander Maddox was missing. Taken. Her fault or not, she knew the truth. She was the only person left who could find him. The only person he trusted. And the people hunting him had decided they were hunting her too. The blackout transformed the hospital into a labyrinth of shadows. Arya pressed her back against the wall, forcing her breaths to slow as she listened, really listened, to the darkness. Somewhere behind her, footsteps paced with controlled patience, not rushed, not frantic. Predatory. She swallowed hard and moved, one careful step at a time, sliding her hand along the wall until her fingertips brushed a corner. Her pulse flickered like a faulty bulb. She turned into the next hallway, guided only by faint lightning flashes bleeding through windows. The storm's glow carved brief silhouettes across the floors, giving her momentary glimpses of the hospital she thought she knew, now twisted into something unfamiliar. She reached the stairwell door and pushed it open as quietly as she could. A metallic creak betrayed her. She winced. The footsteps behind her paused, then sped up. Arya didn't think, she ran. Down the stairs, skipping steps, grabbing the rail as thunder rattled the entire building. She reached the second floor and burst through the door, slamming into a wall of darkness so dense it felt almost warm. Her eyes strained to adjust. The emergency exit signs glowed faintly red, casting long, distorted shadows across the hall. The pediatric ward. Empty at this hour. She walked slowly, listening for anything, the whisper of movement, the scrape of boots, even breathing. Nothing. Only silence. Too much silence. When lightning flashed again, she glimpsed something on the floor, a key card. She knelt and picked it up. Dr. Keldon. Her heart lurched. Why would his card be here? Why outside pediatrics? A soft click sounded behind her. She spun. A door at the far end of the hall eased open an inch, pushed by someone hiding behind it. She held her breath. Then from the gap, a single eye stared back at her, wide, terrified, pleading. A woman's voice whispered urgently, "Nurse Arya? Is that you?" Arya recognized her instantly. Nurse Kelly, one of the night shift veterans. Arya rushed over and slipped inside, locking the door behind them. Kelly grabbed her shoulders, trembling. "Thank God. I thought those men were coming back." Arya steadied her. "You saw them?" Kelly nodded, wiping her tears with shaking hands. "They went into the ICU. I heard struggling, then machines went off. I hid in here before they saw me." Arya's stomach twisted. "Did they take the commander?" "Yes," Kelly whispered. "They wheeled him out on a gurney. They didn't want anyone to know." Lightning flashed again, illuminating the horror in her eyes. "Arya, they're not just after him. They're after anyone who knows what happened in that or. That includes you." Arya already knew, but hearing it from someone else made her knees weak. Kelly grabbed her wrist and shoved something into her hand. A folded piece of paper. On it, an address. A warehouse by the docks. "I overheard one of them mention this," she whispered. "I don't know why, but they seemed scared of whoever's in charge of it." A loud crash echoed from the hallway. Kelly froze. Someone was checking rooms. One by one. Arya pulled Kelly toward the supply cabinet. "Hide. Don't come out unless the lights return." Kelly clung to her. "Arya, you can't save him alone." Arya forced a brave smile she didn't feel. "Then it's a good thing I'm not alone. Colonel Delane will come. I just have to reach him first." She eased open the door and slipped into the hallway. The footsteps were closer now, heavy, methodical. Hunters moving with certainty. Arya gripped Keldon's keycard in one hand and the address in the other. She moved like a shadow through the storm-lit corridors until she reached a window overlooking the ambulance bay. Then she saw it, two masked men loading a gurney, Maddox's gurney, into the back of an unmarked military transport van. The engine rumbled to life. They were leaving. Arya's heart hammered with a single truth. If she didn't follow now, Maddox would vanish forever. The wind howled across the training field as dusk settled into a deep, bruised purple. For the first time since Holt had arrived, the base felt tense, like the ground itself sensed that something dangerous was coming. Trainees whispered in small circles, their eyes cutting toward the barracks where Sergeant Maddox and his clique stayed. Something had shifted since Holt humiliated them in the sand. Their laughter was gone. Their swagger? Replaced with a quiet, ugly kind of stillness. And Holt felt it. She sat on the edge of her bunk, elbows on her knees, hands clasped tight. Her pulse was steady, too steady. That was always the warning sign. When her body entered warrior calm, violence usually followed. Reyes walked in, stopping when she saw Holt's expression. "Hey," she said softly. "You look like you're preparing for war." Holt didn't smile. "Something's off." Reyes sat beside her. "You've been beating them fair. Outrunning them. Outshooting them. Outthinking them. People like Maddox don't get humiliated without plotting payback." Holt's jaw clenched. "I'm not worried about payback. I'm worried about crossfire." Reyes hesitated. "You think they'll try something dirty?" "I think they'll try something stupid," Holt corrected. Then she stood. "And I don't plan to wait for them to pick the battlefield." Across the base, lights flickered on the mess hall building, silhouettes moving inside. 3 shadows, big, blocky, unmistakably Maddox's crew. Holt's instincts sharpened. They were staging something. She headed outside, boots crunching over gravel. Behind her, Reyes followed. "Holt, don't engage alone." "I'm not engaging," Holt said. "I'm observing. And if they're doing what I think they're doing, we need evidence." As they neared the mess hall, the muffled voices grew louder. "She needs to be taught a lesson," Maddox growled. "But the cameras," one of his guys said. "We kill the cameras," Maddox snapped. "Then we set the trap." Reyes inhaled sharply. Holt didn't. She simply stepped closer, quiet as a shadow. The door cracked open. Holt pushed it wider, and the three men froze. Maddox's eyes widened. You. Holt stepped into the room, hands at her sides, voice deadly calm. You planning to jump me? Or were you hoping I'd walk into whatever you're cooking? Maddox smirked, but it was thin. You think you're a hero? Think the instructors like you? You're nothing but a publicity stunt. A story. Meanwhile, the rest of us earned our place here. Holt walked right up to him until they were inches apart. Not scared. Not even blinking. You want to test who earned their place? She said softly. Pick a fair fight. But you won't. Because deep down, Maddox, you know exactly why you'll never beat me. And why's that? He spat. Holt leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. Because I'm not here for ego. I'm here for purpose. And purpose always beats pride. Maddox shoved her shoulder, hard. Reyes gasped. Holt didn't move an inch. Slowly, deliberately, Holt placed her hand on Maddox's chest and pushed him backward. He stumbled 2 whole steps. His face reddened. You touch me again, Holt warned, and you'll regret it. Maddox snapped. He lunged. Reyes shouted, Holt. But Holt was already moving. Her arm looped his wrist, her knee found his thigh, and she rotated him with brutal precision, throwing him onto the table so hard the plates jumped. His 2 goons charged. Holt ducked under the first punch, kicking a chair into one attacker's shins. The second swung wide. Holt grabbed his shirt, pivoted, and slammed him into the wall. Reyes yelled, Stop. Holt, stop. If you fight back, they'll blame you. Holt froze in mid-motion, breath steady, fist clenched, inches from Maddox's face. And that was the breaking point. Not the fight. The restraint. Maddox stared up at her, truly scared now because he finally understood the truth. Holt could have ended him. But she didn't. And that terrified him more than any punch. The mess hall fell silent. Then, a voice boomed from the doorway. What the hell is going on here? Holt turned. Standing there. We're all 4 generals. And their expression said everything. This wasn't over. Not even close. The generals stood in the doorway, their eyes like cold stones. Holt froze in place, holding Maddox in a grip that had every ounce of her control in it. She didn't look at him, she didn't need to. The look on his face told her everything. Fear. Real fear. Fear of the woman standing over him. Fear of what he knew would happen next. Captain Holt, General Monroe said, his voice heavy, official. Step away from Sergeant Maddox. Holt didn't move. She held his wrist tight, her stance wide, ready to snap into the next move at any moment. I said step away. Monroe's voice was clipped, demanding. The other generals stood just behind him, their expressions unreadable, like statues carved from the same ice. Maddox scrambled to his feet, face pale, a thin line of blood dripping from his lip. He wiped it off with the back of his hand, eyes darting between Holt and the generals. I didn't do anything. Maddox shouted, his voice more pitiful than defiant. Holt glanced at Monroe, then at the other generals. There was no mistaking it, the game had changed. She wasn't just a recruit anymore. She was in the middle of something much bigger than herself. You want to tell them how this started, Sergeant? Holt asked, her voice calm but sharp. Monroe's eyes hardened. This ends now. Both of you. In my office. Now. His tone left no room for argument. As she walked past him, the tension in the room was palpable, thick enough to choke someone. The other generals fell in line behind her and Maddox, their boots echoing down the hallway like a countdown. They reached the office in silence, the door slamming shut behind them. The room felt smaller, more suffocating now. Holt stood at attention by the door, but it wasn't long before she heard the voice of General Wright, another one of the generals she'd come to respect. Sit down, Holt, Wright said. His voice was low, but it carried a weight that made her knees bend slightly. She obeyed. Monroe sat behind the desk, folding his hands in front of him. You think you've earned the right to challenge Maddox? He paused. Because I'll tell you right now, you've broken regulations and you've broken the chain of command. We do not tolerate insubordination. Holt's chest tightened. I didn't start this, sir, she replied, steady. I'm not the one who's been threatening people, trying to ruin careers, or undermine the integrity of the team. Monroe's eyes narrowed. And you think you're going to expose him? You think you're better than him? I think I'm better for the job, she shot back. And I think Maddox needs to be held accountable for what he's done. You have no idea the games he's been playing behind your backs. Maddox shifted uncomfortably in his chair, not daring to speak. General Wright cleared his throat. The problem is, Captain Holt, you've put the whole unit in jeopardy. There are protocols. There are procedures. And you've ignored them. Now this isn't just about you and Maddox. It's about the entire operation. Holt felt her stomach twist. She'd known it wouldn't be easy. But she wasn't about to back down. What's the next move then, sir? You want me to pretend I didn't see what I saw? Wright exhaled slowly, almost as if he were considering her words. Monroe interjected, his tone colder now. No, we don't want you to pretend. But there's something you need to understand. Sometimes the bigger picture requires sacrifices. Your actions have consequences, Holt. The silence was thick. Holt's throat tightened, her pulse hammering in her ears. You're asking me to ignore what's wrong, what's dangerous. And I'm not going to do that, Holt said, her voice steady, but the weight of her words was heavy. I'll take the consequences. But at least I'll know I did the right thing. Monroe stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he leaned back in his chair, his eyes scanning her face. You're right. Maybe you did the right thing. But you've also made it impossible for this to end cleanly. We can't just let things go because you feel guilty about Maddox's pride. General Wright's voice softened. This isn't about pride anymore. It's about what comes next. What's at stake? Holt looked from one general to the next. Their faces were cold. Calculating. They weren't trying to save her. They weren't trying to save anyone. You want to know what's at stake? Holt asked, standing now, every word dripping with conviction. What's at stake is a system built on lies, manipulation, and fear. What's at stake is the future of this whole damn unit. She turned her back on them, her fists clenched. The generals watched her, silent. She felt it, what she knew was coming. What they were planning. You've got two choices, Captain Holt, Monroe finally said, his voice low. You can walk out of here and pretend this never happened. Or you can make the choice to expose what Maddox did, and what this whole operation's really about. Arya Holt stared straight ahead into the abyss of their decisions. And she knew, her path had just been chosen for her. The silence in the room after Monroe's ultimatum felt suffocating. Holt stood with her back to the generals, her fists clenched, her mind racing. She had no more choices left to make. She couldn't walk away from this. Not now. Not after everything she'd seen. You think I'm going to let you sweep this under the rug? She said, her voice cold and sharp. She turned to face them, her eyes hardening. You've been hiding something, haven't you? Something that's been festering in this unit for far too long. Monroe stood up slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. You don't know what you're dealing with, Holt, he said quietly. This goes far beyond Sergeant Maddox. This is bigger than you. Bigger than all of us. If you expose this, you'll destroy everything you've worked for. I don't care about what I've worked for, she replied, stepping closer to the table. I care about what's right. And what's right is stopping this before it goes any further. If that means losing everything, then so be it. General Wright exchanged a look with Monroe, his jaw tight. You're not just exposing Maddox, Holt. You're exposing an operation that's been in place for years. The kind of operation that has too many powerful people behind it. You're a pawn in a game you don't understand. Holt's heart pounded in her chest, but her resolve didn't waver. Maybe I'm just tired of being a pawn. Monroe's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You think you're the only one who's seen the cracks? You think you're the only one who wants to fight back? Every person in this room has their own demons to deal with, Holt. But we're not fools. We know what happens to people who try to expose the truth. And we're not about to let you drag us down with you. A silence filled the room as Holt's words hung in the air. She glanced at the generals, at their cold, calculating eyes. There was no compassion left. No hope. Only a cold calculation of what was to come. You want to know the truth? Holt's voice cracked. The truth is that the ones in power will stop at nothing to protect their secrets. And they'll use people like Maddox, like me, as pawns in their game. She took a deep breath, meeting Monroe's stare. But the people who have the most to lose, those of us who still have honor, are the ones who will fight. Even if it means fighting alone. She turned away from them and walked toward the door. I'm not going to be your scapegoat. If you want to stop me, you'll have to kill me. There was a long pause. Then Monroe spoke, his voice low and resigned. You're right, Holt. You're fighting a war you can't win. But as Holt reached for the door, she heard Wright's voice, quiet but determined. We're not going to stop you. But you'll have to do it alone. We can't cover your back anymore. Holt stopped, her hand on the door handle. She turned around slowly, her face hard. I knew that already. She stepped out of the room, the weight of their words sinking in. As she walked down the dark hallway, the sound of the storm outside seemed to mirror the chaos inside her mind. She was alone now. Completely alone. But for the first time in her life it felt right. She knew the stakes. She knew the danger. And she knew she had no choice but to expose the truth, no matter the cost. There was no going back. Not anymore. As she made her way to the exit, she heard footsteps behind her. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. Arya. The voice was familiar. It was Reyes. Arya turned to face her, her heart pounding in her chest. What are you doing here? Reyes looked around, her eyes scanning the hallway as if making sure no one was watching. I couldn't let you do this alone, she said quietly. You were right. We've been fighting the wrong enemy. Holt's breath caught in her throat. You're with me? Reyes nodded. I've got your back. Whatever happens. For a moment they stood there, the weight of everything pressing down on them. But in that moment Holt knew she wasn't alone. She had someone to fight with her. Together they stepped into the unknown.